everyone. Tom Ritchie with AdBuzz Canada. I'm here in Toronto at Rethink, and we're going to head in and get an interview with Chris Staples. So I'll catch you on the inside. Okay, so Chris,
yeah,
great to meet you. Thanks for meeting with AdBuzz.
No,
how's Toronto treating you?
it's been great so far.
Yeah.
You know, we've been in business now for 10 years, and right from the first year, half our business was in Toronto.
Right.
So it's kind of ridiculous. We've never had an office here, and now we do. And yeah, so it's great. We've been here for four months.
Yeah.
And we already have 12 people, and
wow,
yeah, we're starting to look for more space. So yeah, it's great.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
So the clients are obviously responding really well. I mean, when you check out their website, it's like, we feel your pain. So.
Well, I don't know how that went over, but. Yeah, what we were trying to say in the website is that we think Toronto's ready for an alternative.
Sure.
And we've heard from a lot of clients that they're not happy with the model of most agencies.
Okay. Yeah.
Most big agencies have a core agency, and then they have all these divisions for things like interactive and design.
Right.
And what that means is that if you're a client, you're sitting around the table with 10 different people, each with their own business card, each trying to get a slice of the pie, each charging you, by the hour, and it's too expensive. So we're this like low-cost way of getting the same results.
Right.
Everything in here, the couch you're sitting on, this chair is from IKEA.
Yeah.
So our overhead is about half of what the big agencies.
So a completely new model.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a completely new model. There are, Taxi and Sid Lee try to do a similar thing, but you would be sitting on a very much more fancy couch there.
Yeah.
And with the money we save on having cheap and cheerful surroundings, we're able to hire more writers and art directors.
Okay.
And that means clients get more attention because the team is only working on one thing at a time instead of 20. So so I think it is a pretty different model, and certainly that's what clients have been telling us since we've been in Toronto, and we've won a lot of new accounts, and it's been great.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. So, I mean, obviously, if we research Chris Staples, we can find out your background. But can you just run us through what was your path from, maybe early childhood? We'll talk about that, like if you were a creative type person, or did that develop slowly, and then you decided you're going to take. Just run us through that path.
Yeah, okay, so I come from a little town in Alberta called Devon. It's like 1,200 people. My parents were teachers, and so the house was always full of magazines, which I loved for the articles, but I also loved the ads, especially the car ads. I was obsessed by 70s cars, like the Cordoba with Corinthian leather. And once I read about Corinthian leather, I knew I wanted to be in advertising. No, but the Lincoln Mark V and the Pacer and all these great great car ads, Volvo's car ads, Volkswagens. And so I started drawing my own car ads. And I made up my own car brands. I came up with Saturn and Pony and Colt long before they were real brands, right? And and I'd write all the copy on them and come up with theme lines. And this was when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And so I knew then I wanted to be in advertising. But being in a small town in Alberta, the guidance counselors really can't help you too much. So I didn't even know there was options to take advertising writing in the US, and there weren't any courses at Canadian universities, so I thought, well, you know what, I'll take the next best thing I can think of, which is journalism. So I went to Carleton in Ottawa for 4 years and took journalism, which was really hard, but it was the best thing I ever did, because now I look at everything through the eyes of a journalist, which is great when you're trying to create campaigns that get news, get on the news, and that's our goal always, is to get on the news.
Awesome.
So I finished at Carleton, went back to Edmonton, didn't have a book, didn't know what I was doing, managed to get a job in an agency with a letter I wrote called 9 Reasons You Should Take a Chance on a Green Kid Like Me. Got hired by a fluke. I always tell young people that they should go to a smaller city to break into the business, because in London, in Calgary, and Halifax, people are desperate for anyone that knows anything. And so by the time I was 27, I was a creative director in Edmonton. I had a 40-person agency, and I had no idea what I was doing. I decided to move to Vancouver in 1990 to escape the winters, and could barely get a job anywhere. Got a job at Palmer Jarvis, which was a terrible agency at the time.
At the time?
They were famous for their 3 martini lunches, and that was about it. And then in 1993, the guy who owned the agency, Frank Palmer, decided he wanted some respect, and he said, you know what, we're going to make the creative product better. He brought in some consultants. they decided they would make me creative director even though I was like 33, because I could sort of sell anything to anyone,
sure.
even though I didn't know how to create good ads. And yeah, I sort of, a bunch of people left, a bunch of new people came in, and I got a crash course in how to create good ads. And within 5 years, we were Agency of the Year 3 times, and
wow.
number one in Strategy's Creative Report Card. So that's, yeah. And then Frank sold the agency in 1999 to DDB, and it got all political and weird. And so me and a couple of buddies from PJ started our own shop in 1999. So
cool. So it was called Rethink then, like when you started
Rethink. Then,
Rethink?
Yeah. We called it Rethink because we wanted people to know that we knew the other model, the multinational.
Sure.
Working for DDB was awful. I mean, it's a great agency and everything, but the accountants run those big agencies. Yeah. They have no passion for the work. It's not
very corporately run.
It's very corporate. Yeah. You know, I knew that we had to leave when they installed a meter on the photocopier machine, and you had to type in a code for every single photocopy. Yeah. So, yeah, we just thought there was a better way, and yeah, it's been 10 years.
That's awesome.
We have 80 people now.
Wow. Yeah. Very good for you.
Yeah, so it's been good.
So how would you compare the Canadian model, I guess, to the US? Like, are you noticing that any of the Canadian agencies with ties to the US, are they bringing that corporate structure a little more? Is it like, what's the difference between the Canadian and the American structure of the agencies that you notice?
Well, I'm happy to work in Canada because I think it's less. In the U.S., there's a lot of agencies that think that advertising is a science.
Okay.
Everything is researched to within an inch of its life.
Right.
And you can really tell. If you spend a weekend watching TV in the States, everything has sort of a bland sameness to it.
Right.
In Canada, there's not as much testing, and I think that comes through in the work. It's a little raw, a little less processed, a little more funny. I think multinational agencies in Canada have a tough go because basically they're just adapting American work for Canada.
Right.
But there's a lot of good independents here.
Sure.
There are a few good independent agencies in the U.S. as well, and there's some really great ones, obviously, like Crispin and Wyden, and that we try to model ourselves on. So, but I think it's a tough business down there. You're dealing with a lot of bean counters and a lot of people that want to turn advertising into science.
Yeah. So explain the actual culture then, the feel of Rethink.
Well, you'll have to take some footage as you walk around here. I think it's very intense, but focused. One of our things is that we try to have a balanced life.
Yeah.
And this is because we come from Vancouver. If you walk through the halls of Rethink at 7 at night, you wouldn't find a single person.
Wow.
We're all off at yoga or the gym or riding around the seawall. And as a result, the only reason we can do that is by being extremely focused during the day.
Right.
If you come in at 7 in the morning, you'll find lots of people. So people get an early start, they work hard all day, they eat at their desk, and then they go home at night.
Yeah.
And we have a really set process as well in the way that we do our work, that we've developed by stealing little bits from other agencies over the years, and it really works well.
Yeah.
And the whole process is designed to create as many different options as we can before we narrow it down to our single choice.
Yeah.
So we have a saying that your best idea is either your first idea or your 100th idea, but you won't know until you've done 100 ideas. Now, at most agencies, there's no time to do 100 ideas. You only have time to do 10.
Sure.
But we try to make time so you have time to do 100 ideas.
Right.
And then we put all the 100 ideas on the walls of our offices. These walls here are covered in cork for a reason, because they're usually covered in ideas.
Right.
And then we bring people in the target group. Sometimes they work here, sometimes they're the courier or the mailman, sometimes they're people from the street. And we ask them to look at the ads, and we pull them down until we have a landslide winner.
That's great.
All these ads are done just as little scribbles on pieces of paper, no tight comps.
Yeah.
So it's very loose. And the reason we can do that and spend time going and going and going is because we don't waste a lot of time on letting account planners come up with the strategy.
Right.
We involve the creative people right at the beginning, and we save 2 weeks on strategy.
Nice.
And by doing our comps loose, we save a week on execution. So that adds 3 weeks to every major project.
Wow.
And that allows us to do 100 ideas.
Yeah, huge amount of time.
So
wow, that's
our corporate motto, we actually have t-shirts that just say keep going. And that's the philosophy of Rethink, is keep going, keep going, keep going. Even if you think got a great idea, keep going, try to beat it.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's get into cause marketing for a second.
Yeah.
If money was no object, the client had no money, you've got all the money you need, which cause would you effectively go after right now?
Well, you can go on our website. Like, I think we probably do more pro bono work than any other agency in Canada. Okay. We're not about profit or the bottom line. We don't have any profit goals that we try to set, and we don't have to answer to anyone. So we do all sorts of work for causes sometimes that you wouldn't even expect. Like, they're not necessarily things that would make you cry, but like Science World, which is the non-profit science museum under the Dome in Vancouver. We've worked on them for 7 years. We do the Contemporary Art Gallery. We do a lot of cultural things as well. But we've done the YWCA, we've done WISH, which is the a center for sex trade workers on the downtown east side. We've done Loving Spoonful, which feeds AIDS patients meals. If you go on our site, like there's probably 25 causes that we support.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So what advice could you offer any up-and-comer? Not necessarily a student, but someone that maybe they've been in the industry a couple of years, they got a little beat down, and they're feeling, I don't know where I want to work. What's the Chris Staples advice? Well,
if you go to our website, rethinkcanada.com, there's an article in our opinion section that I wrote a couple of weeks ago called How to Ruin Your Career in 6 Easy Steps.
Read it? You have to read it yourself.
And so read that article, and it will tell you the mistakes. Young people are impatient. I was just talking to a guy yesterday, a writer from Calgary, who has, in 3 years, been at 4 agencies. And I just said, you've got to slow down.
Wow.
And Rome wasn't built in a day. I didn't win my first award till I was 32. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. And you got to stay in a job for 2 years. I don't care what the job is. You've got to stay.
You got to stay there.
You got to choose your jobs wisely, and you got to know that if you're talented, you'll be in demand. And stay there and learn what you can from it. Even if you're doing bad ads, at least you then will know always what a bad ad is. And even if there's things you hate, you'll always have this fire in you that says, we're never going to do it that way when I get a chance. So you got to stay. And if you're having a hard time breaking into a big agency in Toronto, go somewhere else. Go to a small town, a smaller town. And And my other big advice is just to stay focused on the game, on your own game, not other people's games. Too many young people in this business are obsessed by the merry-go-round of advertising, not just in Canada, but in the US and around the world. They know all the names of the creative directors at Crispin Porter and Wieden and Kennedy. They read CA, and they're all over the blogs, reading every ad that comes in, and they're spending time commenting on getting into fights with people on what's a good ad on IHaveAnIdea.org and Ads of the World. They follow who's getting hired and fired at every Toronto agency, and I will tell you, it's a stupendous waste of time. And it's the difference between being good and great is just putting your nose down and doing great ads wherever you are. I know 3 or 4 creative directors in Toronto. I couldn't tell you the rest. I don't know anybody. I don't know any of the names at any of these agencies anywhere. I could care less. I care about what we're doing, not about what anyone else is doing.
That's great advice. That's good advice. So I gave you just a basic outline of what AdBuzz Canada is. If there's anything I can do or we can do for this industry, what could it be?
I don't have advice on that.
No.
There's always. I think that there's not a really great voice for creative people that are in the business. I Have an Idea does a good job for students, and then marketing does a good job for account people and marketers on the client side. But the creative side of the business doesn't really have a voice, and I think that that's something that you probably are already doing on your site. So.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time,
thank you
Chris.
very much.
I really appreciate it.